think it'll rain. This is Pastor Lou. Lou Kilgore. I'm here. I'm a pastor in the High Mountain Presbyterian Church. And living in the changed times. For whatever that means for you and for me. And one of the things that came in the door with this pandemic was this idea of a pastor's chat. It's been a discipline for a long haul now, 6 or 7 months of meeting Monday through Friday here, me sitting in this chair, you listening at some time, maybe not at 2 o'clock, but in some space, and thinking together, reflecting together about how we are, how we're doing. Sometimes the you I'm talking to is a person that's been with me all along, and I'm faithful for the long-running commitment of many of you to be a part of this time of devotion and reflection and the pause, I've referred to it as. But maybe you're new. Maybe you just saw something that caught your eye as you were cruising by on Facebook or YouTube, and you stopped in to see what it's all about. It's all about this. This is a chair you might think about yourself sitting in the days that come and go in your life. You may have thought to yourself, I really ought to go talk to somebody. And maybe that might have, depending upon where you've come from, you might have thought about talking to a pastor. It's pretty intimidating. Not because I want to be intimidating, but I know it's intimidating to walk through that threshold of that door into the pastor's office and sit down and have the pastor look at you and go, "So how are you? What's going on? What's happening?" Woo. Yeah. It's a crystallizing moment. And so, in a way, kind of doing it like this, you can imagine yourself in this chair, and you can at least bring to the surface of what that might be. What would your answer to that question be? How are you doing today? I'm aware, I'm reading about it, I'm hearing about it. The pressures of our ordinary lives are great right now. The stress of everything. I know there's a lot of you, I hear, you don't want to talk about this pandemic anymore. I get that, but it's here. It's changed our lives. Can't go anywhere without a mask. Don't want to. I'm always watching for signs of people that are careless about it. I don't want to get this disease. I don't want you to get this disease. And that's caused a lot of change in our lives. And then it puts a really heavy, I'm just going to call it a psychological pressure on us. Even if you're not staying awake at night worried about getting the disease, there are other major things that have changed in our lives that can cause stress, loneliness, depression, sense of you're being alone and isolated and whatever, even sometimes in a crowd of people. So I've been doing this, sitting here, doing this pastor's chat as a way of trying to perhaps create an ease of coping. And in the last couple of times, I've been talking about this season that we're entering into, this season of what we call Halloween, which has lost most of its connection to its tradition. And the days leading up to Halloween, the folklore about this holiday in the season of dormancy, when death appears to be sort of looming, has been throughout the ages, long periods of time, a time to turn our attention to that which frightens us, that knocks on the door, it goes bump at night. The expansion of darkness in our life during a day. All these things working in concert together to sort of bring to the forefront the fact that life is full of bright, wonderful, happy, love things, But a companion to that in life is also things that aren't so beautiful, that are sometimes scary. And so the season of Halloween, October, comes to us. It's encouraged by what's happening in nature, but the folklore and the traditions around it have amplified it. So we talked about All Hallows Eve being a time where traditionally we try to focus on how to cope with the things that we are afraid of. And there's some wisdom, there's real wisdom in the idea of putting them out in front of us, and the whole game that Halloween played, which was, dress up like that which you fear and get out among it, and don't let it get you, because it doesn't really know where you are. It's pretty cool. But today I want to go beyond that and then focus on what was originally, as I told you, the impetus for how these kinds of traditions came to be. In that the day of All Saints' Day, usually in the fall, was a day when the church, the organized church in a variety of different denominations, decided that it would be really good in this season of what can sometimes be despair and darkness to celebrate the lives of great people. Because by celebrating their life and turning our attention to their life, we can draw strength from them. And they may be people, in the official sort of Roman Catholic Church, the priests and there was a hierarchy of these things, and you weren't really considered a saint unless you were like at the top of the pile in the way you lived your life. But true to the Protestant tradition in which I grew up, we've always seen a smaller, more local kind of expression of that high and holy ritual of sainthood. And we've seen instead that there are saints in our lives. Some of them are living and some of them have died. But the connectivity between us in life is that there have been those in my life that when I take time, I have to thank them. I thank them because sometimes even without knowing it, I draw on their story for strength to make it through a scary day, a day that frightens me. At the age of 65, I've had a few long, dark nights of the soul. I have. I haven't been sheltered in my life from the kinds of things that come. And truthfully, in the living of my life, when I'm faced with a big fear or a worry or something, I have this reserve in me because of what I've been through to say, well, I've been here before. I've been here. I've had this happen to me before, and I'm okay. And I think that the drawing on the power of the saints is like that. It goes beyond an experience that you might have had, and it draws on the experience of someone who was near you, a mentor, a teacher, a mother, a father, a friend. And I think of the roll call that could be, right, making a list of the saints in my life. I tell stories all the time, and usually the saints of my life appear in my stories. Sometimes they're people that were very close and influential in my life, like my grandmother or my grandfather, on either side of my parents' heritage. Or it might also be, I was thinking this week about teachers who went beyond the role of just educating, but that somehow, not so much for me in high school. I think there were these people who shared their life and their strength in a way with me as a young person in elementary school. And then high school is a big blur for me, but the reconnection in my sense of story with people in my days in college. Professors who were much more than people who just taught, but they were people whose lives also were available to me for discernment of careers or working through problems that came up. A lot of times parents try to keep our children away from people we think are bad influences. We can see that. It can happen. You get hooked up with a bad crowd and it has an influence on you. It can pull you in a direction. And sometimes when it's happening is when you deny it the most. But on All Saints' Day, we tried to give witness to the brighter side of that. That the best of us, the best of who I am, those brighter experiences of my life and who I am, I owe many, many, many times to people who were there and didn't have to, but chose to make a difference in my life. At various times, in and out, our parents have that influence. My mom and my dad. I really never lived my life that closely with my siblings. We were extended over a bigger period of time, but if I start to make the list, and I did this yesterday, I started to make the list of people who've come into my life and who I came into their life, and their influence on me was for the better. It was always for the better. It didn't mean that I always welcomed it. I had a preaching professor who, when I was encountering this professor in seminary, I just had a huge battle with him. And at one point in his wisdom, he said to me, there's going to come a time where you're going to reflect back on the things we've talked about, and you're going to, now I felt this was really arrogant, you're going to one day really see the value of what I've tried to teach you. And sure enough, it's happened exactly the way he described. He's long gone. I can't call him up and thank him. At times during this, thinking about how you become who you are, how you arrive, not that you're ever finished, but that how you arrive at who you are is always, always, always the result of influence. And the good things come from good influence. People who have encouraged you in ways that ultimately made you stronger. Maybe not even in the moment where they were in your life. I've had, as a pastor model, I can think specifically of people along the way that have been really, really amazingly strong influences in the direction of making me a better person, inviting me to figure out how to live my life in a better way. And I'm saying all this only to come back to where I was yesterday, at the end of this time together, to encourage you. Last week, I encouraged you in order to see what you can't see, to see as Moses demanded of God, I need more. I need to see something tangible to show me that you were in my life. And God took Moses into the cleft of the rock and invited him to look back. And some of you have written to me, you've talked about how looking back, you've seen the circumstances and you can see the hand of God at work moving you. They always say hindsight is 20/20. That is true more than ever in reference to seeing the unseen, the work of God, the presence of God. We believe in a God that you cannot see. But when you look back, and so now I'm in a kind of another chapter of that same thing on this theme of All Saints' Day. Of really, really taking stock of what you received along the way. Sometimes the people who have had the greatest influence on me would never have seen themselves as a saintly person. In fact, many of them wanted to be perceived as rebellious, probably wanted to live outside the scope of ever being thought of in any way as a saint. but their influence on me was saintly. It was, some cases, it was life-saving. A word spoken at the right time. It's incredible, the power of sometimes the willingness, not in a controlling way or anything like that, but in a willingness to speak the right word in the right time. Confucius said, when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. When the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. And I've had those moments, never being ready to hear such a word at any other time. The moment arrived and the person was there to speak the word, to extend the comfort, to give the kitchen table, to sit and to weep if I needed to over what was happening, and then to sing hymns that stirred the deepest sense of God's abiding love and grace in my life. Wow. I'm 65 years old. I didn't get here by myself. Most of the troubled stuff of my life, I got there by myself. But for what's good, for what's enduring, I owe it to the saints of my life that came in that pathway. So I've been spending some time. Last year at this time, I actually looked up some of the older members of this group of saints in my life, and I called them. One of the most shaping members was my Old Testament professor from seminary, and Reverend Dr. Tom McDaniel. And I thought, he's still alive, and so I called him. I actually called him, and I got through to him, and I had the opportunity to say, wow, I did not know you were having such a profound, good influence on my life. I did not know that I was going to owe almost every thought I have for teaching the Bible to others, to you, to your courage, to your insight, to your wisdom. That was a cool opportunity. But it doesn't have to be you talking to them in person. I think this season invites us, maybe this year more than ever, to know it in ourselves. To really take stock of that answer to that question. Not how are you? That's a good question for the conversation here. How did you get here? How did you get where you are? How did you get so smart? How'd you survive what you've been through? And of course, what comes out of that in All Saints' Day is going there again if you need the encouragement, claiming and drawing the power, the great host of witnesses that we have accumulated in our lives. But also a prayer of thanks, said specifically to them. Now, one of the big dividing places between the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church was that the Catholic Church said that the saints that had died, the real saints that had died, that you could pray a prayer to them. You could pray to St. Peter. And that St. Peter's influence positively in the world of faith didn't end when he died, and that Peter could hear your prayers, and that Peter, from the world of afterlife, he could help you. The Protestants, I don't know, probably because of how it got exploited. You know, there was a kind of a whole tradition of selling the influence of the saints, and it led to a lot of abuses. It's not important for our discussion today. I'm not really sure that, I would encourage you to pray to your grandmother or to pray to this image of the saints gone on, but draw on their experience. That's my Protestant way of seeing it. And crying out to the one that influenced you if they've died, or call them up, send them a note, send them a sense of gratitude, because it'll only deepen your connection and your own ability to unlock that resource for strength in your life. Wow, the time shot by fast today, my friends. On this rainy day, I hope that you're dry. I hope you're inside and warm. And so my prayers are for you in this season. Let's make it a season of life and hope. Let's make it a season of deepening of faith. of the reminders and rehearsals of what we believe most and deepest in our lives that will get us through whatever is coming. Thank you. I pray for you always, and I always mention you for your faithfulness in the conversation and this relationship, for how it shapes my life as well. God bless you, my friends. I'll talk to you tomorrow on Friday.